While I was recovering from emergency surgery, my sister made my 11-year-old son clean her entire house alone, then locked him outside in 101-degree heat for hours without water. Lazy kids don't get to sit inside, she said. I did what was necessary. 5 days later, 2 officials were standing on her porch, holding a folder with her name on it. Aiden was sitting on the front steps of Valerie's house with his backpack between his knees when I pulled into the driveway. He did not wave, he did not stand up. He sat with his hands folded on top of the bag and his head tilted slightly forward, like a boy waiting for a bus he did not want to take. I had been out of surgery for 31 hours. My abdomen was stapled shut, and the Percocet was wearing thin, and I should not have been driving, but I was. Because my son had been at my sister's house for 3 days, and something in his voice on the phone that morning had sounded like a faucet someone had turned down to a trickle. I got out of the truck and walked to the steps, and that is when I saw it. His lips were cracked and pale, not chapped. Cracked, the way lips crack when the body has stopped sending moisture to the surface. His neck was sunburned in a sharp line where his collar had been, the skin red and tight and already starting to peel at the edges. His forearms were pink and dry. His eyes were glassy and slow to track. I have been an HVAC service technician for 12 years. I install and maintain heating and cooling systems in commercial buildings and residential units. I have completed OSHA heat illness prevention training 4 times. I know what heat exhaustion looks like because I have pulled coworkers off rooftops when they stopped sweating in August. I know the signs the way a carpenter knows rot. By sight, by texture, by the way the surface tells you what happened underneath. My 11-year-old son was sitting on concrete steps in 93-degree afternoon air, showing every early-stage indicator of heat-related illness. I knelt in front of him. Hey, buddy, how much water did you drink today? Aiden looked at me with those slow eyes. She would not let me refill it. I reached into his backpack. The blue steel water bottle was there, the one I had packed full of ice water the morning I dropped him off, the one with the scratched A on the bottom that I had etched with a flathead screwdriver on his 9th birthday. The day we went fishing at Keller Reservoir, and he caught a bluegill bigger than his hand. The bottle was empty. The metal was warm to the touch, not room temperature. Warm, like it had been sitting in direct sunlight for hours. I turned his hands over. The palms were red and raw, with 3 small blisters across the base of his right fingers. Chemical blisters. I had seen identical marks on my own hands early in my career, before I learned to wear nitrile gloves around industrial cleaners. What happened to your hands? She made me clean the bathrooms, and the kitchen floor, and the windows. Kara watched TV. I looked at the front door. It was closed. Valerie was not on the porch. Valerie was not at the window. My sister had handed my son back to me through a front door she did not bother to open, and she was somewhere inside that house pretending this was a normal Tuesday. I almost walked up those steps and put my fist through the screen door. I almost let the staples in my abdomen tear open on the porch of a woman who had locked my son outside in triple-digit heat and called it childcare. But Aiden was looking at me with those slow, glassy eyes, and he needed water and shade and his father's truck, and not a scene on his aunt's front porch. I picked up his backpack, and I helped him into the passenger seat, and I drove. If you have ever trusted someone with the only person in your life who matters, and then discovered that trust was a lie, you already know where this story is going. If you are new to Family Secret Tales, stay with me. Because 5 days from now, 2 people with badges and a folder are going to be standing on that same porch. Aiden's mother left when he was 3. She moved to Portland, signed the custody papers without contesting, and stopped calling after the first year. I do not say that with bitterness. I say it because it is the fact that shaped everything after it. I raised Aiden alone. I woke up at 5, dropped him at school by 7:30, ran service calls until 3, picked him up, made dinner, helped with homework, read with him until he fell asleep. Every day. For 8 years. I am not a perfect father. I work with my hands. I come home smelling like refrigerant and sheet metal. My truck has mud on the floor mats and service manuals in the passenger seat, but my son has never gone to bed without dinner. He has never missed a dentist appointment. He has never once asked me why his mother left, because I made sure the question never had a reason to form. The answer, if he ever asks, is simple. She left. I stayed. My VAC certification cost me $6,200 in 2 years of night classes at the community college, while Aiden slept at Phyllis's house 3 evenings a week. I earned $58,000 a year before overtime. I take every Saturday call that comes in during the summer, because summer is when the compressors fail, and the thermostats break, and the people who live in houses without working air conditioning will pay anything to get it back. Every emergency call is $150 just to show up. I have driven my truck to houses at midnight with Aiden asleep in the passenger seat, wrapped in a blanket, because I did not have a sitter and I did not have the option to say no. That is what single fatherhood looks like in a trade where the phone rings when the temperature rises. Aiden never complained. He would wake up in the truck when I opened the door to get my toolbox, and he would say another one, and I would say another one, and he would pull the blanket over his head and go back to sleep. He learned to read by the dome light in my truck cab. He drew his first fish on the back of a service invoice. That boy is everything I have built. And I built him the same way I built a cooling system, carefully, with the right parts, tested under pressure. Valerie is 4 years older than me. She married Greg when she was 26. They have Kara, who is 9. Valerie has always believed that she is the responsible sibling, the organized one, the one who held things together after Dad died when I was 17. In her version of our family, she raised me. In reality, she managed me. She told me what to wear to Dad's funeral. She told me which trade school to apply to. She told me I was not ready to be a father when Aiden was born. She has spent 15 years speaking to me like a woman giving instructions to a contractor she does not fully trust. 6 weeks before the surgery, at a dinner at our mother Phyllis's house after Kara's birthday, Valerie delivered the line that I have not been able to forget. Phyllis was at the stove. Greg was leaning against the counter. Kara was in the living room. Aiden was in the backyard drawing in his sketchbook. Valerie looked at me across the table and said, "Your son sat under a tree at Kara's birthday party and drew pictures instead of playing with the other kids. Emmett, that is not shyness. That is what happens when a boy grows up without a mother and a father who crawls under houses fixing air conditioners for a living and thinks that counts as raising a child. Aiden is soft because you made him soft. And one day he is going to thank me for showing him what the real world expects." Phyllis set down the wooden spoon. She did not turn around. Greg looked at the floor. I stared at my sister for a long time, and then I stood up and walked outside and sat next to Aiden under the tree and watched him draw a fish with a colored pencil, and I did not say a word about what had just been said inside that kitchen. That was the line. Soft, because you made him soft. I carried those words for 6 weeks, and I thought they were the worst thing my sister would ever say about my son. The appendectomy happened on July 14th. Emergency not scheduled. I woke up at 2 a.m. with pain so sharp I thought I had been stabbed in my sleep. The ER doctor said another 4 hours, and it would have ruptured. They took it out that night. The hospital bill before insurance was $27,000. My copay was $4,500. I had it in savings because I had been putting away $200 every month since Aiden was born. Not for surgery, for his future. But the future had to wait because the present was trying to kill me. I called Valerie from the recovery room at 6 a.m. because I had no one else to call. My mother lives 40 minutes away and does not drive at night. My buddy Ray from the VAC crew offered, but he was on a commercial install in Henderson for the week. Aiden needed to be somewhere by the time his summer day camp bus arrived at 8:15. Valerie answered on the third ring. She sighed, the way she sighs when I ask for anything. A sound like air leaking from a tire she considers beneath her to repair. Fine. Bring him over. But I have things to do this week, Emmett. He is going to have to keep himself busy. He has his sketchbook, I said. He will be fine. I packed his bag myself, standing in the kitchen with one hand on the counter and the other holding my stapled abdomen together through the bandage. Blue steel water bottle, filled with ice water all the way to the brim. 2 peanut butter sandwiches in a Ziploc. Sunscreen in the side pocket, SPF 50, the kind with the blue cap that Aiden could open with one hand. His sketchbook. 3 colored pencils, red, blue, and the dark green one he used for fish scales. His phone charger. A $20 bill folded into the front zipper pocket in case he needed anything. I wrote a note and put it in the top of the bag. Call me if you need anything. I love you. Dad, Valerie picked him up at 7:15. She did not come inside. She honked twice from the driveway. Aiden hugged me gently, careful around the bandage, and walked to her car with his backpack over one shoulder and the water bottle in his left hand, the scratched A visible against the blue metal. She said she would keep him until Thursday. 3 days. I thanked her from the doorway, and I went back to the couch and I fell asleep with my hand over the incision, and I did not dream about anything. 3 days later, I picked up my son, and his lips were cracked, and his hands were blistered, and his water bottle was empty and warm, and his eyes could not hold mine for more than 2 seconds. The $20 bill was still in the zipper pocket. The sunscreen had not been opened. The note was still folded at the top of the bag. He had not been allowed to use any of it. Phyllis met me at the pediatric urgent care on Miller Road. She took one look at Aiden in the waiting room, and her face changed the way a thermostat changes when you push it past the limit. Something behind the surface clicked over and did not click back. She knelt in front of her grandson and touched his cheek with the back of her hand and then looked at me, and her eyes said everything her mouth did not. The visit cost $385 out of pocket because my insurance deductible had already been eaten by the appendectomy. I paid it without thinking. Dr. Gillen examined Aiden for 22 minutes. She documented everything with photographs and clinical notes. Dehydration, moderate, evidenced by decreased skin turgor and dry mucous membranes. Heat exhaustion, early stage, consistent with prolonged exposure to ambient temperatures above 100 degrees without adequate hydration. Chemical irritant contact dermatitis on both palms. Consistent with ungloved use of household cleaning agents containing bleach or ammonia. Sunburn 1st degree, concentrated on neck, forearms, and the tops of both ears, where a hat would have covered if anyone had thought to give him one. Dr. Gillen turned to me. How long was he in the heat? He says he does not know. He says the sun moved. She looked at the sunburn pattern, the way I look at a condenser coil that has been running without airflow. The damage told the timeline. This is consistent with several hours of direct and partial sun exposure in temperatures above 100 degrees, likely around 4 based on his account and the burn pattern. For an adult, that is dangerous. For an 11-year-old without water, it is reckless. Dr. Gillen told me she was required to report suspected neglect as a mandatory reporter. She would be filing her own report with CPs before the end of her shift. I told her I wanted the case number when it was filed, because I would be submitting my own packet too. She printed 2 copies of the medical report and handed one to me and one to Phyllis without being asked. I asked Aiden to tell Dr. Gillen what happened. He spoke quietly, looking at the floor. Aunt Valerie told me to clean the bathrooms, both of them. Then the kitchen floor. Then the windows in the living room. She gave me a bucket and some spray bottles. I asked for gloves and she said I did not need them. Kara was on the couch watching a movie. When I was done with the windows, I sat down on the couch because my hands hurt. Valerie said lazy kids do not get to sit inside. She told me to go outside. I went outside. She shut the door. I tried to come back in after a while because it was really hot. The door was locked. Greg was home. I saw him through the kitchen window once. He looked at me and then he looked away. How long were you outside? Aiden looked at me. I do not know. A long time. The sun moved. Phyllis held the report with both hands. She read it standing in the hallway outside the exam room. When she finished, she folded it carefully and put it in her purse and said one sentence. File everything. I will drive. That was the moment I knew my mother was not going to protect Valerie from this. That was the moment the matriarch chose. If you have ever had to document what someone did to your child, you know it does not feel like revenge. It feels like filling out forms while your hands shake. Welcome back to Family Secret Tales. The next morning I called Sabrina Moss. I did not know her yet, but Phyllis had mentioned that Valerie's neighbor across the street had once said something about children in the yard. Sabrina answered, and I explained what I needed. She agreed immediately. I drove over and placed a portable temperature data logger on Sabrina's porch post, south-facing, at the same sun exposure angle as Valerie's front yard. The logger records ambient temperature every 60 seconds and stores it with a timestamp. It costs $180. I have had it for 7 years. It has never been wrong. Drake also pulled official NOAA weather station records for Valerie's zip code to corroborate. While I was at Sabrina's, I shot the concrete sidewalk between the two houses with my Fluke infrared thermometer. At 6:15 in the morning, the surface temperature was already 91 degrees from retained heat. By noon, that concrete would cross 130. I thought about Aiden's sneakers, the thin-soled ones he wears in summer. I put the thermometer back in my truck and I drove home. I retrieved the data logger 48 hours later. The graph was clean and undeniable. The same kind of printout I attached to commercial HVAC compliance reports that building inspectors rely on to certify occupancy. On July 17th, the day Aiden was locked outside, the ambient temperature hit 101.3 degrees at 12:14 p.m. and did not drop below 99 until 3:47 p.m. The NOAA records for Valerie's zip code confirmed a high of 102 that afternoon. 4 hours of sustained triple-digit heat, verified by calibrated professional equipment with a certificate of accuracy and confirmed by official weather records. I printed the graph. I labeled it with case standard formatting, location, date range, instrument serial number, calibration date, my name and license number. I signed and dated it the way I signed service reports. Then I sat at my kitchen table and I built the file the way I built a service packet for a commercial client. Cover page, summary, supporting documents, photographs, timeline. CP's complaint, filed on July 20th, the same day Dr. Gillen's mandatory report was processed. 14 pages. Aiden's medical report from Dr. Gillen with her clinical photographs and diagnosis notes. The temperature data log with graph. The NOAA weather confirmation. 12 additional photographs of Aiden's condition taken by Phyllis at the clinic. Cracked lips, sunburned neck, blistered hands, dry skin on forearms. My written account with dates, times, and a description of the water bottle I found empty and warm in his backpack. Aiden's written statement, which he asked to write himself. He sat at the kitchen table with a pencil and notebook paper and wrote 4 paragraphs, no misspellings, in the careful handwriting of a boy who has always taken his time with words. The last sentence was, I asked to come in and the door was locked and I could not get my water. I read that sentence 3 times. Then I put the paper in the folder and I closed it. Police report filed the same day. Criminal child endangerment referral. The officer reviewed the medical report, the temperature data, and the photographs. He asked me how I obtained the temperature readings. I told him I am a certified vac technician and I used calibrated professional equipment. He nodded and wrote it down. He said the DA's office would evaluate for charges and that the data logger printout would be submitted as supporting evidence. I almost stopped there. I almost told myself the file was enough, that the system would handle it, that I had done what I needed to do. But when I returned the data logger, Sabrina was waiting on her porch. She had more to say. She sat at my kitchen table for 45 minutes. She told me what she had seen over the past year, carefully, with dates she had written in a small notebook, because something about the number of children coming and going from Valerie's house had bothered her for months. Valerie had been watching children for money. 4 families. The Rodriguez family paid $800 per month for their 6-year-old. The Changs paid $850 for their twins, age 4. A single mother named Wendy Pratt paid $750 for her 7-year-old son, the boy Sabrina had seen crying on the steps 2 months earlier, and a couple, named the Dillards, paid $800 for their 5-year-old daughter. All cash. No receipts. No contracts. No license. No insurance. No background check on Valerie or Greg. No CPR certification. No fire safety inspection. $3,200 per month in unreported income. The children arrived between 7 and 8 in the morning and were picked up between 4 and 5. Valerie had never registered with the county. She had no daycare permit. The operation had been running for at least 3 years. Sabrina pulled out her phone. She had photographs, wide shots from her kitchen window showing the driveway and front yard, not close-ups of children. Activity patterns. Timestamped by her phone's camera, children arriving, parents leaving cash on the porch table, Valerie waving from the door. 11 photographs over 7 months. I sat there processing the math. $3,200 per month times 12 months, $38,400 per year, times 3 years, $115,200 in unreported income. No taxes filed, no quarterly estimates, no W-2s, no 1099s, no records of any kind. I almost called Valerie right then. I almost picked up the phone and said every word that had been building in my chest since I saw Aiden's cracked lips on those front steps. But Sabrina was still talking, and what she said next turned the case from a family matter into something larger. The day your son was there, I saw him through my kitchen window. He tried the front door twice. It was locked both times. He sat on the steps for a while, then he walked to the side yard and sat against the fence. There was no shade there after noon. I did not see Valerie open the door until around 3:15. Sabrina signed a written statement that afternoon. And then the daycare discovery broke the case wide open. Aiden was not at Valerie's house because she wanted to help her brother recover from surgery. Aiden was at Valerie's house because Valerie needed her house cleaned before Monday morning, when 4 paying families would drop off their children. The bathrooms, the kitchen floor, the windows, those were not chores assigned to teach a lazy boy a lesson. Those were prep tasks for an unlicensed business. My son was free labor for a daycare operation that had been running under the table for 3 years. The cruelty reframed completely. Valerie did not lock Aiden outside because he sat down. She locked him outside because the house was cleaned, and she did not want a sweaty 11-year-old tracking dirt across floors that 4 sets of parents would see at drop-off. Lazy kids do not get to sit inside was not discipline. It was inventory management. She was protecting her product. Drake Hutton, the attorney, charged a $2,500 retainer. I paid it from the same savings account that had already lost $4,500 to the appendectomy copay. The account that was supposed to be Aiden's college start was now $7. 00 lighter, because my sister decided my son was a cleaning crew. Drake handled 3 filings in 2 days. A complaint to the county licensing board for operating an unlicensed childcare facility, which carried potential civil fines of up to $1,000 per violation, with daily penalties possible if the operation continued after notice. A supplemental evidence packet to CPS with Sabrina's signed witness statement, her 11 photographs, and the daycare financial evidence. And a letter to all 4 families, printed on Drake's letterhead, narrowly factual, no accusations beyond documented facts, no demands, no insults, just notice that a licensing complaint and CP's report had been filed, and that their children may have been in an unlicensed care setting without insurance or safety certification. I delivered the letters myself. I drove to each house. I stood on each porch. I handed each parent the envelope, and I said the same thing 4 times. Your child was in the care of someone operating without a license, without insurance, without a background check, and without basic safety protocols. My son was locked outside in 101 degrees without water in that same house. I thought you should know. The Rodriguez family pulled their daughter that evening. Mr. Rodriguez called Valerie and told her the children would not be coming back, and he expected a refund of the last month's payment, $800, by Friday. The Changs called the next morning. Mrs. Chang's voice was shaking. The Pratt boys' mother, Wendy, drove to Valerie's house and took her son's car seat out of Valerie's garage and did not say a single word. The Dillards texted one word: done. $3,200 per month, gone in 48 hours. One of the parents, Drake told me later, had called the Ears tip line about unreported income. Drake estimated the tax liability on 3 years of unreported earnings at $18,000 or more in back taxes and penalties. I sent the email to Valerie that night. It was long. It was specific. Every fact, every date, every temperature reading, every photograph description, every filing listed with case numbers, every family she was going to lose, every agency that now had a file with her name on it. I did not threaten. I did not curse. I wrote it the way I write service reports. Here is what happened. Here is the data. Here are the consequences. I ended with one line: I will be at your house tomorrow at noon. You do not need to prepare anything. The preparation is done. Valerie read it. I know because the read receipt came back at 11:47 p.m. She did not reply. I pulled into her driveway at noon the next day. Valerie was on the front porch, the same porch where Aiden had been sitting 4 days earlier with his empty water bottle and his cracked lips. She was standing with her arms crossed and her jaw set. Greg was inside, visible through the screen door, leaning against the hallway wall with his hands in his pockets. You had no right to send that email, Valerie said before I reached the bottom step. I stopped walking. I stood on the sidewalk and I looked at my sister. He was outside for an hour. Maybe 2. He had shade. Kids play outside in the summer, Emmett. You are turning this into something it is not. 101.3 degrees, I said, from 12:14 p.m. to 3:47 p.m. I have a calibrated data logger with a certificate of accuracy that says so. Aiden was outside for 4 hours. Dr. Gillen documented early-stage heat exhaustion and moderate dehydration. Your neighbor watched him try the front door twice. It was locked. His water bottle was empty because you would not let him refill it. His hands were blistered because you handed an 11-year-old cleaning chemicals without gloves and told him to scrub your bathrooms so your unlicensed daycare would look presentable on Monday. Valerie's arms came uncrossed. Her right hand moved to the porch railing and gripped it. That is not what happened. CPS has the medical report. They have the temperature data. They have Sabrina's signed statement. They have the licensing complaint for the daycare you have been running for 3 years without a permit, collecting $3,200 a month from 4 families who trusted you with their children. The police have a criminal child endangerment referral. Drake filed the licensing board complaint yesterday. All 4 families have been notified. All 4 have pulled their children. Valerie's grip on the railing tightened until her knuckles whitened. Her jaw worked once without sound. Those are lies, she said. Sabrina has had it out for me since I told her to keep her dog out of my yard. She is making things up to hurt me. Sabrina has 11 timestamp photographs from her phone camera showing children being dropped off at your house, cash changing hands in your driveway, and toys in your yard on weekday mornings. The Chang family confirmed they had been paying you $850 a month for their twins. Wendy Pratt confirmed $750. The Rodriguez family confirmed $800. The Dillards confirmed $800. That is $3,200 a month, Valerie, for 3 years. Would you like me to do the math on what you owe the Ayers, or would you like Drake to send you the estimate in writing? Valerie's face went white, not pale. White, the blood left her skin the way water leaves a sink when the plug is pulled. She had not known about the other parents. She had not known they had been contacted. She had thought this was between her and me. The screen door opened. Greg stepped onto the porch. Emmett, this is between family. You do not need to involve agencies and attorneys and neighbors. We can work this out. I looked at Greg for the first time. You were home that day, Greg. You were inside that house while your nephew was locked outside in 101 degrees for 4 hours. You could see him through the kitchen window. You did not open the door. You did not bring him water. You did not call me. The report has your name on it too. Greg's mouth opened. He looked at Valerie. Valerie did not look back. He was not in any danger, Valerie said. Her voice was higher now, thinner at the edges. Children play outside in the heat all the time. I played outside in the heat when we were kids. We had a garden hose and a mother who checked on us every 30 minutes. You locked a door. I forgot. The door locks automatically. I did not realize it had latched. The door does not lock automatically, Valerie. I installed the deadbolt on that door myself 3 years ago when you asked me to upgrade your locks after the neighborhood break-ins. It is a manual thumb turn. Someone turned it. That stopped her. She had forgotten that I installed the lock. She had forgotten that I know how every lock in her house works because I put half of them in for free on weekends. While Aiden sat in her living room watching movies with Kara, she had forgotten that the man who fixes things for a living remembers what he fixed. Valerie took a half step backward and her shoulder hit the doorframe. Her breathing shortened. She reached for her phone in her pocket, pulled it halfway out, pushed it back. Her eyes were wet, but her face was hard, like a wall with cracks running through it that had not yet let the water in. You are going to destroy this family, she said, over a sunburn. The pediatrician called it heat exhaustion. It is in the file. You said I crawl under houses, fixing air conditioners, and call it parenting, I told her. You were right. I crawl under houses so my son has a cool one to come home to. You locked him out of yours. I let the silence hold for 5 seconds. Then I delivered the line I had been carrying since I saw Aiden's cracked lips on those steps. 101 degrees for 4 hours. No water. The door locked. My son is 11. The folder has your name on it. Valerie's hand slid off the railing. Her knees did not buckle, but her posture caved, her shoulders rolling inward like she was trying to make herself smaller. She looked at Greg. Greg was staring at a spot on the porch floor. He did not move. I am done, Valerie. No more holidays. No more birthdays. No more summer weeks. Aiden will never be inside your house again. If you contact him, the contact goes into the file. If Greg contacts him, that goes in too. Every call, every text, every drive-by. Drake is documenting everything from this point forward. I walked to my truck. I did not look back. 5 days after the CP's complaint was filed, Sabrina texted me a photograph. 2 investigators were standing on Valerie's front porch. A woman in a gray blazer carrying a leather portfolio and a man in a pressed shirt with a clipboard and a county ID badge clipped to his belt. The woman was holding a manila folder with a tab on the side. Even in the phone photo taken from Sabrina's kitchen window across the street, I could read the tab. Valerie's last name in black marker. Block letters. Valerie opened the door. The woman held up her badge and said something. Valerie's hand went to her mouth. The man opened the clipboard and angled it so Valerie could see the top page. They stood on that porch, the same porch where Aiden had sat with his empty water bottle and his cracked lips 8 days earlier, and they asked to come inside. Valerie stepped back. The door closed behind them. The folder contained everything I had built. The medical report from Dr. Gillen, the temperature data log with the 1013-degree graph, the 12 photographs Phyllis had taken at the clinic, Aiden's handwritten statement in pencil on notebook paper, Sabrina's signed witness account with 11 supporting photographs, the licensing violation complaint, and individual reports from the Rodriguez, Chang, Pratt, and Dillard families, all of whom had filed their own complaints after I notified them. 14 pages of evidence. Professional, documented, time-stamped, built the way I build a service packet, cover page, summary, supporting documents, nothing missing, nothing out of order. The investigation was open that day. A follow-up visit was scheduled for 10 days later. Valerie was told not to operate any childcare activities pending review. The daycare collapsed the same week. All 4 families had pulled their children before the CP's visit. $3,200 per month, gone, mister. Rodriguez had demanded an $800 refund for the last month. The Changs had left a voicemail that Mrs. Chang's sister was a licensed daycare operator and she was filing a formal complaint as a professional in the industry. Wendy Pratt had gone to the police station and added her own statement about the time her 7-year-old was locked on the porch. The licensing board opened a formal investigation that carried potential fines of $1,000 per violation per day. Drake's research indicated that 3 years of unreported income, roughly $115,200 at $38,400 per year, would trigger an estimated 18,000 or more in back taxes, penalties, and interest once the EAR's tip line referral from one of the parents was processed. The referral had already been filed. The math was no longer Valerie's to manage. It belonged to an agency that does not negotiate the way family does. Valerie's phone rang 3 times that week from numbers she did not recognize. She answered none of them. Greg told Phyllis in a short phone call that Valerie had not left the house in 4 days, and that the daycare toys in the side yard, the plastic slide, and the sandbox with the faded blue cover were still sitting exactly where they had been the last day a paying child had come through the gate. 2 weeks later, Phyllis called Valerie to dinner, not to reconcile, to clarify. Phyllis's kitchen table seated 6. Phyllis was at the head. Emmett was to her right. Aiden came but went to the backyard after 5 minutes because Phyllis told him he did not need to hear this. Phyllis's sister was there. Greg was there. Valerie sat at the far end with her hands in her lap. Phyllis stood. She did not raise her voice. She never does. When my father was alive, he was the one who yelled. Phyllis was the one who spoke quietly, and everyone listened harder because of it. I drove my grandson to the pediatrician. I saw the blisters on his hands. I saw the sunburn on his neck. I held his water bottle, and it was empty and warm, and the scratched A on the bottom caught the light. And I thought about Emmett taking his son fishing on his 9th birthday and etching that letter with a screwdriver because he could not afford to buy a new bottle with a monogram. I held that bottle, and I understood what had been done to my grandson in your house. Phyllis looked at Valerie. Then she looked at Greg. And you, Greg, you were in that house. You could have turned a faucet and filled a glass and walked it outside. That would have taken 11 seconds. You did not move for 4 hours. Greg's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. He set it down without eating. Phyllis turned back to Valerie. You told me you were watching him. You locked him outside like a stray. In this family, my family, we do not do that to children. Any children. Not the Pratt boy. Not the Chang twins. Not my grandson. Greg has authorized adding Emmett as backup emergency contact for Kara at school, ahead of your sister's circle. And if I hear of one more child being left in the heat, the call I make will not be to Emmett. It will be to the same office that sent those 2 people to your porch. Greg looked at his plate. He did not deny authorizing the change. Phyllis's sister closed her eyes and pressed her napkin to her mouth. Valerie opened her mouth and nothing came out. She reached for her water glass and stopped, as if the act of reaching for water in this room at this table, with that sentence still in the air, was something she could not bring herself to do. She put her hand back in her lap. Valerie tried one last time 3 days later. She called my cell at 9 p.m. I picked up because Kara's name was in my head, and I wanted to make sure nothing had happened to her. We are brother and sister, Emmett. Mom would never forgive you for calling the state on your own family. Remember when I held your hand at Dad's funeral? Remember when I drove you to the hospital? This is how you repay me? Mom already knows, I said. She drove Aiden to the pediatrician with me. She saw the blisters. Valerie was quiet for a long time. Then she hung up. The unfinished apology came 2 weeks after that. I learned about it from Kara, who told Aiden during a phone call that Phyllis had arranged so the cousins could stay connected. Kara's voice was small and careful on speakerphone while Aiden sat at our kitchen table. Mom keeps trying to say sorry to her phone, but she cannot finish. She starts, and then she stops, and then she puts the phone down. She did it 3 times yesterday. Dad told her to just write a letter, but she said a letter is not enough, and a video is too much, and she does not know what is in between. I filled in the rest in my head because I knew that kitchen, and I knew the AC unit I had installed there 2 summers ago, free of charge, on a Saturday, while Aiden and Kara played in the yard. Valerie sitting at her table. Phone propped against the salt shaker. 3 sentences in. Aiden, I want you to know that what happened at my house was not. Delete. Start over. I should have stopped. Phone face down. She did not finish. She did not send it. Greg was sleeping in the guest room by then. He had not spoken to me since the porch. He had not spoken to Phyllis since the dinner. Kara had started asking questions neither of them could answer. Why does not Aiden come over anymore? Why are the toys still in the yard if nobody is coming? The daycare toys were still in the side yard, a plastic slide, and a sandbox with a faded blue cover, but no children had been there in 3 weeks. The licensing board investigation was open, with a preliminary fine assessment of $8,500 for operating without a permit. The tax letter had not arrived yet, but Drake said the EARS processing timeline was typically 4 to 6 months and that the estimated liability on $115,200 in unreported income was between $18,000 and $22,000 before interest. Valerie's phone held a folder of draft apologies she could not complete, and a voicemail from Wendy Pratt's attorney requesting reimbursement of $250 for 3 months of unlicensed care. Aiden's water bottle was not in that house. It never would be again. August 15th. My backyard. The sprinkler was running in lazy arcs across the grass, throwing light through the water in the kind of slow summer pattern that makes a yard feel like the world is not in any hurry. Aiden was sitting on the porch step with a library book open across his knees. A fat paperback about a kid who trains hawks that he had checked out twice already. His blue steel water bottle was full and cold beside him, condensation running down the side and pooling on the concrete. The scratched A on the bottom caught the last of the porch light. Phyllis's car was in the street because she had come for dinner, and she was inside washing the dishes she had insisted on washing even though I told her I would do them twice. My work truck was in the driveway, toolbox closed for the weekend, the data logger back in its case behind the seat where it belonged. The incision had healed. The file was complete. The savings account was $7,000 lighter, but it was still there, still growing at $200 a month, still pointed at Aiden's future. Aiden turned a page. He did not look up. He did not need to. He was reading in the shade of his own porch, with cold water beside him, in a house with a door that was never locked against him. The sprinkler caught the light and threw it across the grass in slow arcs. I watched him from the kitchen window, and I did not interrupt. If you have been through something like this, if someone you trusted hurt the person you would die for, I hope this story reminded you that the right paperwork, filed with the right evidence at the right time, is worth more than every word you want to scream. 14 pages. 1 data logger. 1 empty water bottle. Thank you for watching Family Secret Tales.